episode of Real Talk. I'm Nadia, and this is Alina. Alina,
Hi.
Why are you on your cell phone? Alina, how come you're on your cell phone?
I'm on a call.
What? How long have you been on this call?
For around an hour, maybe?
That is, Alina, maybe you should put your cell phone away. Have you not heard that cell phones may or may not cause cancer?
What? Let's talk
Okay.
about it. Let's talk about that today. That was our very bad skit, but thanks for watching.
Yeah, welcome back, guys. So today we have a really interesting topic and one that we had a really fun time prepping for because it's a great question. How many of you are watching us right now on an electronic device, whether it's your phone, a tablet, or a computer?
Yeah,
All of you.
exactly. And I think it's something that we've all sort of been conscious of, even if we haven't done the research or studied or looked too much into it. It's something you intuitively hear. My mom always tells me, don't stay on the phone too long. You're going to give yourself a tumor. Put your phone outside the room when you go to bed at night.
Yeah.
Turn your Wi-Fi off. Don't stand too close to the microwave. These are all such common themes that live sort of in the same world that we really want to talk about today. And specifically, we are going to talk about cell phones.
Yes, specifically cell phones. So, big question, do cell phones cause cancer?
So before we even get around to actually talking about cell phones and cancers and research specifically, we just want to clarify what electromagnetic radiation really is, or just talk about radiation in general as well. And I feel like it's a catch-all term that we all use. When we think of radiation, we think it's just all the same. It's just one blanket response. There's just radiation and it's bad.
Right.
But really it lives along the spectrum over here.
Ah, yes.
And I don't know if you actually remember this from maybe grade 9 or grade 8 physics, where there's an electromagnetic spectrum. So you can go from low frequency and long wavelengths to much shorter wavelengths and higher frequency where there's much higher energy.
Yes, and different devices and different sources live on the spectrum. And this is also where we come into the different terms of ionizing and non-ionizing.
Yeah. So ionizing radiation, guys, it lives more on this side of the spectrum. So that's your X-rays, gamma rays, UV rays. Those are the ones that are basically the ones that are a bit more dangerous. But then your non-ionizing forms are the ones over on that side, like your radio waves and your microwaves. And this is where things like Wi-Fi and cell phones live.
And even your hair dryer emits very low radiation waves, so that would be all the way over here.
Yeah.
And the important thing to note, and this is kind of where we are for understanding if there can be tissue changes or not. Right now, we know that ionizing radiation can cause cellular damage or DNA damage, which is not potentially a good thing.
Exactly.
Whereas non-ionizing radiation has not really been totally proven to be able to create cellular change.
Exactly. And to really hit the point home, we're going to give you a bit of an analogy or a metaphor here, if you will. So imagine that this is a window pane, guys. So imagine the window pane is your cell, right? And if you throw a golf ball at it and you keep smashing it on the window.
And you're throwing it pretty hard and pretty fast.
Exactly. That is definitely going to smash the window. And that's essentially your cell or your DNA. It's going to get damaged. And that is essentially ionizing radiation. But on the other hand, non-ionizing radiation, those little cotton swabs over there or cotton balls, no matter how many of them you throw at the window, I don't care if you come with like a big bucket of just cotton balls, just throw it at your window.
It's not going to break.
No, it's not going to break. Your window's just like, whatever.
Right.
No big deal.
Absolutely. And so the other important thing is that although it's still a lower frequency and non-ionizing is seen as non-damaging, your body still absorbs it, okay? And so there's different levels of absorption that they've deemed safe and not safe. The other thing to remember is, so X-rays, guys, when you get an X-ray done, there's a reason why your the healthcare provider that's helping you isolates the area of the X-ray. So they put big lead-heavy sheets around the rest of your body because they want to only expose the selective tissues to those rays because they know that they can be damaging. Same with the sun's UV rays. We know that that can cause cellular damage, which is not good. When we're talking about radio frequency, which is what our cell phones and our computers and Wi-Fi emit, that's on the non-ionizing spectrum, which is over here. And that's really what we're going to talk a little bit more about today.
For sure. So now here's the big question. Will you potentially get a brain tumor or increase the risk of brain tumor with cell phones?
Because remember, and this the whole question comes to, for the majority of times, you saw, Alina, we're putting it very, very close to our head, right? So that's a direct exposure from the source to our head. So naturally, a lot of people are wondering, you know, not only are we seeing more and more people using cell phones, so population density and the sheer volume of people using cell phones and the amount of cell phone towers and Wi-Fi towers have increased. People are also using their phones for longer, right? So these are all troubling questions that people are starting to have to determine, is this dangerous? Should we be worried?
Exactly. So luckily, there's been research done, right? There's already been hundreds of studies exploring exactly this question. But before we even get into some of that research, we do want to hit on these 3 key points. So there's 3 main types of studies that have been done. One is doing it obviously in lab mice and in rats.
This cute little guy.
I know. But of course, you have to remember that you can't take exactly what's been done in mice and extrapolate it into humans and expect the exact same thing to happen. And we will talk about this a bit more in depth when we talk about some lab rat studies.
Yep.
Same thing when it comes to looking at something in a petri dish or in a test tube. It's very hard when it's not in a living organism to say something with surety that it's going to be the same way in humans. And of course, when it comes to actual human studies, which have been done as well with cell phones, a lot of the times it's really hard to isolate a certain variable, right?
I love this analogy, and this is what makes this so difficult, because there has been quite a fair amount of research done, but the type of research that's been done is difficult to make a very concrete answer of whether the radiation is damaging or not. So I want you guys to imagine for a second, because anytime we do any type of research, in order for it to be a direct causal effect, we need to eliminate as many variables as possible. So for example, in order for us to completely accurately say that cell phone radiation over 10 years of time causes brain tumor X, you'd have to picture
I'd have to sit in a room.
Literally, I'd have to put Alina in a room, okay? So she'd have to be in a lab room. We would have to make sure that she was talking on the phone, the same phone as the other people were gonna test for 10 years' time. I'd have to feed her pellets, or I'd have to feed her one type of food so that that variable was the same. She'd have to have the same amount of exercise, sunlight, all of these different things that we know affect health on a physiological level and an emotional level as well.
And that's pretty unethical to do.
Yes.
That's pretty unethical to do to people.
We do not want to put her in a room like that. Absolutely not.
No.
But as you can imagine, that's what makes this research really tricky.
Yeah.
Because we can't, and a lot of the research that has been done are longitudinal studies or prospective cohort studies.
Yeah.
And so essentially what that means is they've looked at people and they've tracked them over a very long period of time, because that's ultimately what they're looking for, disease progression. Or the other thing that they're doing is they're taking a group of people and then they're asking them questions. So obviously there's some issues with that as well. And we'll get into some of the studies that did a really good job, or the best job that they could, to talk about the findings that we can kind of look at for some light on the issue.
Exactly. So like we said earlier, guys, there have been a lot of studies, but we're just going to focus on some of the biggest and most reliable studies till date that are perhaps the most popular. So there's one that's been done by the US National Toxicology Program. And now this one was done in mice. And essentially what they did was, for a period of around 2 years, they put the exposed mice to radiation, so around the same amount that would be comparable to cell phone use in humans.
It was 9 hours a day.
For 9 hours, exactly.
9 hours a day, these little mice were exposed to this radio frequency.
Exactly. So now the findings in that research, they did of course find that, now there was female rats and male rats. They found that there was no effect in the female rats. And in the male rats, they did see that the risk did increase for certain types of tumors, actually in the heart more so than actually in the brain.
Yeah, so they found a statistically significant increase in heart tumors and brain tumors, and more so in heart tumors. But again, it was interesting because they found nothing in the females, only in the males.
So based on that, you can't really have conclusive, like a big conclusion, or call it conclusive research. And then you have to remember again, this is 9 hours of being exposed to this radiation. How many of us are actually on a cell phone like this for 9 hours in a day as well?
And you know what, that's an interesting question, and maybe it's something for us to chat a little bit, because as I'm thinking about it, I mean, whether I'm on a physical cell phone for 9 hours a day, I'm also in an office space with Wi-Fi all the time. I'm also surrounded by, you know, power lines that are also very low frequency, but collectively in a city, we're kind of surrounded by this radiation all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely something to still ponder and think about, but for now the researchers can't draw any conclusion in humans.
Right.
Especially since it only affected some type of mice as well.
Exactly, but this was the closest that they've kind of gotten to trying to really isolate a study and get a conclusive answer, but they weren't able to yet. So
exactly.
Let's talk about another one.
So here's another study called the Interphone study. Now, this was done on around 5,000 people, and they compared so their control group was people who did not have a brain tumor, and then they actually compared it to people who did have a brain tumor as well. But based on that research and looking at their cell phone usage, they actually couldn't draw any conclusive links based on for cell phone frequency. So no matter how often you used your cell phone, how long you used it for, basically they couldn't come up with any conclusive links for this study.
No. Again, it was a good effort and a huge sample size, 5,000 people to do this, but it's hard, right? They weren't able to really pinpoint and answer the question, do cell phones cause cancer? Another study, weren't able to answer it.
Now, this is perhaps the biggest study, I would say. It's 400,000 people, so huge sample size.
And very smart. I thought this was a very clever way.
So the Danish cohort study, what they actually did is, and this was a prospective study from 1985 until around 1982, I think, to 1995. And then they still updated the research again till 2007. And they followed these 400,000 people through subscription data usage.
So they actually looked at who had been on their phone for long periods of time based on their billing, and then tried to correlate that data with if they had any cancer or health concerns linked to the amount and usage and health concerns. And
again, it was inconclusive. They actually could not find any link whatsoever in increasing the risk.
I know.
So yeah, it's a little unfortunate. That was such a big sample size, but again, no firm results.
No firm results. And now, obviously, this still leaves a lot of questioning. And don't worry, we're going to give you guys our take-home advice. So stay tuned for that, because you know, anytime we bring this kind of information to you guys, and generally at the Hearty Soul, we want to give you all aspects of accurate research of what's going on. And you know, if you guys ever are watching and you find that we're missing a study or we've missed something really important, make sure you let us know so that we can update our articles and make sure that we are being accurate and factually accurate as well. But yeah, again, another letdown. 400,000 people. Too bad.
So here's where we are today, guys. There are unfortunately so many mixed results, and we cannot say that there's a link so far tying it to brain tumor or any type of cancer. There's also limitations in the study, which Nadia will touch upon a bit more, but some of the things are just, you know, you can't isolate the variables. Sometimes you're even relying on people's human memory and judgment as well. And the studies, of course, have also been done in adults right now.
I know, which is a huge concern because there's several theories that are also really questioning, you know, in children, there's three major things. One, not only do they have a nervous system that's more vulnerable and just developing, one. Two, they also, their actual head size is much smaller and their body is much smaller, so the tissue absorption could be higher. And number three, children right now will have the longest exposure time from birth till death compared to current adults. All three things that I think are pretty important to think about, especially when we don't really have conclusive evidence right now. The other thing that's really challenging is the pace at which technology changes and advances and moves, right? I remember when I got my very first cell phone. I guess it was a dumb phone.
Was it this big?
It was not. It was like a Nokia, and I played Snake on it, and you know, texting was 50 cents. So I basically had to tell my parents, like, I am coming home for dinner, and that was 50 cents. So I did not use it very frequently, and now I think about how I use my phone, and I use it very differently. I check my emails on it. I'm on, you know, social feeds. I'm commenting with you guys, chatting with Alina.
And there's constant updates too, right? Which is sending out EMF sort of radiation as well, because before your cell phone would just sit there and not update.
Exactly.
But then if there's apps that are constantly running.
It's completely different. So when we think about children and we think about these limitations, I think it's important to kind of look at a whole of what research has failed to prove and what we kind of know, and try to think about what we don't know so that we can kind of think right now, okay guys, cut through it. Should we be worried? Should I be scared? Should I be going and, you know, living in an igloo up north, isolated, completely away from society? Because that's pretty much the only way that you're going to get away from all of the electromagnetic fields around, which for most of us doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's not realistic.
It's not realistic.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe for a vacation and some solitude, that would be nice.
Maybe.
But other than that, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So let's move forward a little bit.
So here's one thing we did want to actually flag. For most agencies, we did hunt around a little bit and see, is it called a carcinogen right now? What are all the agencies and boards and organizations saying? There was only one that we could actually find. This is from the World Health Organization, so it's called the International Agency for Research on Cancer. It's pretty much their job to label things a carcinogen or not, and they still just label it possibly carcinogenic. And this can apply to so many things.
And it's also, I mean, when you're thinking about a regulatory board like this, we don't know enough. So it's one of those difficult situations where we're at a time right now where research and science is playing catch up. We're trying to figure out more and more, and there's a ton of studies that are being done right now, and researchers working hard to try and figure this out, because this is our day-to-day life now. There's no really getting away from it. So we need to get better information and more research to come to conclusive guidelines. But in the meantime,
here are some things that you can do. So I guess our take-home message right now is we wouldn't be too worried about cell phone usage. Continue to use it every single day, but there are some things that you can do to have a bit more of a safer experience, or just proceeding a little bit more with caution, right? So one of the things, of course, is using hands-free as much as possible.
Not to be confused with Bluetooth. So hands-free is headphones, for example.
Texting where possible instead of being on the phone. That might also just save you some time in the day as well.
And it will limit your usage and the closeness as well, if you're worried.
Exactly. Limiting time, of course, having more face-to-face conversations as well, right? That's just better for us overall. And of course, limiting technology use with children as much as possible, especially trying not to start them at an early age and giving them cell phones a bit later on in life when they're physically just a bit bigger as well. And then the last thing over there we wanted to talk about a little bit, because you may have heard of it. It's called a Specific Absorption Rate, SAR. So there are some phones that have a higher specific So a specific absorption rate is how much EMF sort of your body is absorbing through cell phone usage. And it's capped right now, I think, 1.6 watts per kilogram of body weight. And every single company, so your Apple, your Nokia, your Samsung, everyone has to make sure they abide by these rules that SAR and submit it to like the Communications Commission or whatever it's called. It's a legal guideline. But some phones apparently do emit a bit more than others. But again, it's not an accurate measure yet. So I wouldn't go out and run outside and look at only the phones that have high SAR and try to avoid them. You do want to use a bit of discretion there because usually people measure these things differently as well. Every company does it differently. There's no exact guideline. And sometimes you base it on like a 6'2" man who's like 200 pounds with like an 11-pound head. So it's not
11-pound heads are heavy.
That's a specific guideline.
That is a specific guideline. Heads are very heavy.
Exactly. So that is something you want to keep in mind. Don't focus too much on the specific absorption rate. I did just want to bring it up because I know there's been a lot of articles about that on the web as well. Not something to caution about too much. And I believe we do have a question right now.
Let's check it out. Hello, Michael says hello, and Karen McDonald, hello.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us tonight. We have a question. Are there ways to stop EMF absorption in our day-to-day lives? So
this is perfect for our next slide,
perfect
actually.
Also, because many of you may have heard of these before.
And I had bought this before too, because, okay guys, don't feel bad if you have bought these before. They're advertised sometimes as like pendants you can buy, or just
little stickers that go on the back of your phone.
Exactly. And they say that you can block EMF shields. But the only way to 100% actually block EMFs is with something called a Faraday cage. And that's essentially a metal cage, which is what your microwave actually is, where no waves actually exist, can go outside or exit. Yeah. Exactly. So,
and this is not a Faraday cage.
No.
And the other thing to keep in mind is for these to actually work and stop the waves, they would have to shut your phone down.
Yeah.
So your phone would actually be rendered useless because then it would not be emitting or receiving any signals.
Yeah.
So naturally we know that this is not the case. However, something important that we should mention, and this is really where things get a little bit interesting because there have been more positive studies showing, is that non-ionizing radiation or radio frequency, although that has not shown to create, tissue damage or cellular changes, that can be turned into thermal energy or heat.
Yeah.
And that can be seen to make physiological changes or have some negative effects on tissues.
So is this when I have like a laptop on my lap for really long and it starts heating up and like vents are going crazy?
Exactly. Okay. Or even, just from a pure safety perspective, there have been phones that have overheated and actually lit on fire, which is a direct hazard. No research needs to be conducted on that, obviously. But so that is a small other thought to keep in mind, especially if you're someone who is constantly using your phone over and over and over again, so it's getting quite hot. You have a heavy cover on it, and you're keeping it on your body. That would create a lot of thermal energy that would happen. And thermal energy is actually how microwaves work. So they take non-ionizing rays and turn it into thermal energy to heat your food. Yeah. And that's also why microwaves have a Faraday cage around them, so that there is a safety net around them so that those rays don't come out and affect you.
Perfect. Exactly. So our take-home message with EMF Shields, guys, if you see any of these products,
don't save your money.
Just be wary of them. A lot of the times when you see that they provide research as well, unfortunately, it's research that has been created by them and funded by them. And there's no reliable way to really test or know if it is working, aside from just user testimonials on the website, which you don't know who's really coming up with those testimonials. So,
convenienttestimonials.com.
Yeah, exactly. That's not a real site.
It's not a real site. Actually, it probably is a real site, but who knows? But yeah, hopefully that clears that up. And literally just thinking about the way that your phone works and how those would not work. It's pretty simple.
So then we actually come to the question, okay, do we need to worry about cell phones at all? Like, are there any negative effects if we're thinking about brain tumors and cancer? Do you have an answer, Nadia?
I do, and
You're
I love
bursting
this.
to tell me.
I love this because we just took a pretty complex and like a very specific topic on cell phones and their negative effects, and we basically came to the conclusion that we need more research, right? There's things that you can do to protect yourself now, but we definitely need more research, more time, more studies to really find out if there's a much more causal link.
Exactly.
But that being said, we do know that there are other things that cell phones can do that disrupt our health. One of my absolute favorite ones to talk about is the actual blue light that your phone or device emits that can disrupt your sleep regulation. We talked about this in one of our previous episodes, actually. And it's that blue light that can completely mess up your melatonin and cortisol levels, which makes it difficult for your body to wind down and have a restful sleep.
So you're just more wired and tired, really.
Wired and tired. Not a good combination.
No.
So the best thing that you can do is most Mac devices now actually come with an option that allows you, it's called night mode or night shift, I believe. Night shift.
I don't know.
Night shift. I think it's night
I'm just
shift.
saying yes.
You can go into your settings and you want to make sure you turn that on because what it does, and you'll see it, it creates a warm glow because it's taking off that blue light. Now, if you're a PC user or an Android user, there is an app called Flux. And that does the exact same thing that you can install. I mean, you shouldn't be on your device late at night anyways.
No, it's hard.
I know I'm so guilty of that, absolutely. But that is definitely one. Another one, when we think about devices and social connection and how we are with other people and how we spend time with people. I mean, you know, how many of you have been at a dinner party before with one or two of your really close friends, and all of a sudden your friend has her phone out or his phone out and he's scrolling on something, and your intimate conversation all of a sudden is pop.
You know what I like doing? We have a rule, and guys, if you ever want to try this, it's the second you sit down for dinner or you're at a social gathering, you all take your phones out and you put it right in the middle or in a corner, and then you can't touch it for the rest of the evening.
I like that.
It just makes for a much better experience.
Absolutely.
And you're less stressed. And again, being more social.
Yes, and that's the thing. And we do know that studies have shown that mental health and mental emotional wellness does play a part in cancer prevention and, you know, basic wellness, health and wellness. So thinking about how our phones affect us in other areas is really where we can focus on right now because we know that more concretely.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm just going to check if we have any other questions. This is a fun topic. I know it's definitely something that most people talk about. I was curious when I was going into the research. I was actually very surprised that I couldn't find more conclusive evidence.
Yeah, we definitely thought there would be a bit more, but
yeah. Star asks, actually this is a great question, Star. Does turning the cell phone on airplane mode totally block the EMF? I believe it generally does. Now, I know that electro fields and magnetic fields are different. Electro fields, they don't need to be turned on with a current to still emit, whereas magnetic fields need a current to emit. So I believe that it probably wouldn't shut them off completely, but it would significantly decrease the signal.
But we can definitely research more into it, guys.
It's a great question.
We'll update in the comments.
I was gonna Google it, but I think that's probably inappropriate for right now, so I will not do that. But it's an excellent question. That would be my response. I don't think it would block everything 100% because, I mean, things you wouldn't even expect to emit radiation do, well, we naturally emit a small amount of a field. Bananas. I found out today that bananas.
They actually have ionizing radiation.
Radiation.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that another time. So, but yeah, and it's all about the total cumulative of effects, right? So if you're going to be on your phone 1 to 3 times in your entire life, that's probably not going to do anything. It's the cumulative compounding effect of being on a phone and around these signals over and over and over and over again. That's really where we start to question, and that's where we really need more research.
Yeah, and probably the best thing you can do is just spend more time in nature, being more social. Like, there's such simple things, guys.
I know, vitamin N. Yeah. Vitamin N.
And for nature.
And for nature.
Exactly. So instead of sometimes worrying about, okay, just a particular microwave or a cell phone and trying to put a sticker on it or some shield to block it, let's just look at the big picture and step back for a second and maybe just spend more time outside with people, not around electronics as much, maybe not on your phone late at night. So those simpler things will actually add up to much bigger health effects.
Absolutely. And if we're looking at cancer prevention, there are a host of different lifestyle and diet things that you can do to help reduce your chances of cancer that have nothing to do with cell phones, so that you can always be working on it.
Which have actually been proven by research.
Which have been proven by research.
So we want to focus there more right now.
Absolutely. So,
perfect.
I think that's all. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. This was awesome. Make sure you tune in next week, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you guys have not checked out our other show, Real Food Live, that airs on 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursdays. Sometimes you see me there, which is a lot of fun.
Special guests.
Special guests. But we make amazing recipes that are healthy and always have lots of health benefits, which is super, super fun. And they're really easy, which I love.
Very easy.
Because I am not a huge cooker, so I need very easy things. But yeah, so make sure you tune in then. If you guys loved what you saw today, make sure you give us a like. Or
Please share with your friends.
You can do multiple if you want.
And leave more comments. If you have more questions and you can't think of them right now, type away. We'll be here checking it tonight, tomorrow, and we'll respond to you.
Yes, and also last thing, if there are topics you guys want to cover, so we generally choose topics that our communities have a lot of involvement and a lot of questioning on. But if there's something that we're missing and you guys really, really want to see us talk about it, make sure you let us know. Yeah, it could be anything. If you guys want us to talk about products that you're curious about, if you want more recommendations on things, anything, let us know.
All right, thanks for tuning in, guys.
Bye.
We'll see you next time.